It was a rainy Friday evening, and the small diner on Elm Street was buzzing with people. The sound of plates clinking and soft chatter filled the air. The warm light from the hanging lamps gave the place a cozy feeling. Claire, a quiet and kind waitress, moved quickly between tables with a soft smile on her face. She had been working since morning, but she didn't complain. She just kept going, checking on customers and making sure their meals were just right. Claire had worked at the diner for 3 years. She knew most of the regulars by name. They liked her because she was always polite and never seemed to get upset, even when people were rude. She wore simple clothes and tied her hair back in a neat bun. Her shoes were old, but clean. She didn't care much about looks. She just wanted to do her job well. Just after 7, the front door swung open with a loud creak. A tall woman in expensive heels and a long coat stepped inside. She didn't wait to be greeted. She looked around the room with a frown and walked straight to the counter. "Is this the best seat you have?" the woman asked loudly, her voice sharp. Claire walked over with a calm smile. "Good evening, ma'am. We're a bit full at the moment, but I can get you a booth in just a few minutes." The woman rolled her eyes. "Unbelievable. This place looks like it hasn't been cleaned in weeks." Claire didn't flinch. She just nodded politely. "I'll have your booth ready shortly." As the woman waited, she kept making comments. "Do you even have proper training?" she asked Claire. "Back when I was your age, people had some class. You don't look like you've worked a real job in your life." Claire stayed quiet. She simply guided the woman to the booth once it opened up. She handed her the menu and said kindly, "Let me know when you're ready to order." The woman didn't even say thank you. Instead, she muttered something under her breath about low standards and useless workers. In the kitchen, some of the staff looked toward Claire with worried eyes. But Claire didn't seem upset. She continued doing her job, helping the other customers and making sure everyone was taken care of. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows. The diner stayed busy, and Claire kept moving. Even as the woman continued her rude comments, Claire's kindness never changed. To most people, she was just a quiet waitress. But there was something about her, something steady, something strong, that most people didn't see. Not yet. At least, Claire continued to move around the diner, weaving between tables with ease. She had learned to ignore the sharp words of people like Mrs. Baxter, the woman who had been sitting at the booth near the window. It wasn't easy, but Claire had always believed in treating everyone with respect, no matter how they acted toward her. Mrs. Baxter had been glaring at her for the past few minutes. She made rude comments about the food, about the table setting, and even about the way Claire spoke. Claire didn't mind. She had dealt with customers like this before, people who thought they were better than everyone else. It was part of the job. But still, it bothered her that someone would treat others this way without thinking. As Claire walked back to the kitchen to check on an order, one of her coworkers, Tom, leaned in and whispered, "Don't let her get to you. She's like that with everyone." "I know," Claire replied softly, trying to hide the weariness in her voice. She always tried to keep her composure, but sometimes the words still hurt. Not that she'd ever show it. After a few minutes, Claire returned to the table with Mrs. Baxter's food. The woman didn't even look up when she placed the plate in front of her. "Here's your soup," Claire said gently. "Let me know if you need anything else." Mrs. Baxter scoffed. "This soup looks like something my maid could have made. Why didn't you take more care in preparing it?" Claire felt her face redden slightly, but she quickly recovered, her calm demeanor never wavering. "I assure you, ma'am, we use only fresh ingredients," she said politely, though her patience was starting to wear thin. As Claire turned to walk away, she heard Mrs. Baxter muttering to herself about the poor quality of everything in this place. Claire didn't let the words affect her. She had been working at this diner for long enough to know that people who spoke like that usually had more going on than they let on. Maybe Mrs. Baxter was having a bad day, maybe not. Claire didn't know, and she didn't feel the need to figure it out. It wasn't her place. Her job was to serve and to smile, even when things weren't easy. Just as Claire began helping another customer, a bell rang at the door. The man who had entered was dressed in a sharp suit, his briefcase neatly in hand. He approached the counter with a quick pace and asked, "Is Miss Claire here?" The staff in the kitchen looked up in surprise. Claire hadn't been expecting anyone to ask for her, especially not someone so formal-looking. The man's voice was calm, but there was something serious about him. "That's me," Claire said, walking toward him. "I've got some paperwork for you. It's about your investment," the man said, handing her a small folder. Claire raised an eyebrow. What was going on? Mrs. Baxter, still seated at her booth, glanced up with curiosity. Claire accepted the folder and gave a polite nod to the man. "Thank you," she said, but before she could ask what the papers were about, the man was already walking out the door, disappearing into the evening rain. The situation left Claire feeling puzzled. What was this about? And why did it feel like there was more to the story than she had thought? Claire stood frozen for a moment, the folder still in her hands. The man in the suit had left so quickly that she hadn't had time to ask any questions. What was all of this about? She glanced down at the folder, the curiosity building inside her. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she set it down on the counter and turned to check on the other customers. The atmosphere in the diner hadn't changed. People were still chatting and eating, the usual hum of voices and clinking silverware filling the air. Claire took a deep breath, trying to push the odd encounter to the back of her mind. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the folder. "Hey, Claire, you okay?" Tom's voice broke through her thoughts. He was standing nearby, wiping down the counter with a rag. "Yeah, just something weird happened," she replied, still holding the folder. "What's that?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "A man came in and handed me this," Claire said, nodding toward the folder. "He didn't say much, just that it was for me." Tom glanced at the folder and then back at her, clearly puzzled. "Well, that's strange. You think it's important?" "I'm not sure," Claire said with a sigh, "but I'll look at it later. It doesn't seem like something I should deal with right now." She decided to focus on her work for the rest of the night. The dinner rush was starting to wind down, and there were still a few tables to clear. As she moved from table to table, clearing dishes and wiping down surfaces, she couldn't help but wonder about the folder. What was inside? Who had sent it? And why? Around 8:30 p.m., as the last few customers finished up and began to leave, Claire finally took the folder back to the small office in the back of the diner. The room was cramped, with old posters on the walls and a small desk piled high with paperwork. Claire sat down and carefully opened the folder. Inside, she found a set of documents with a lot of numbers and charts, none of which made much sense to her at first glance. But then, in the middle of the papers, she found a letter. It was short and simple, written in a formal tone. "Dear Ms. Claire, we are pleased to inform you that you are now a majority shareholder in several of our businesses. This includes ownership of the diner where you currently work. We look forward to your continued involvement." Claire's eyes widened as she read the words again. Majority shareholder. The diner. What was going on? Her mind raced. Could this be real? Claire had never thought much about owning a business or having anything to do with big companies. She had always just worked hard, kept her head down, and lived a simple life. Now, it seemed like her whole world was about to change in ways she couldn't even understand yet. Just as she was about to read further, a loud noise from the diner interrupted her thoughts. Someone had dropped a tray in the kitchen. Claire sighed and placed the letter back in the folder. There were still questions to answer, but for now, she had a job to finish. Claire walked back into the main area of the diner, trying to push the strange news from the folder out of her mind for the moment. The last thing she wanted was to get distracted with questions she couldn't answer. She had a job to do, and the diner was still busy, even though the dinner rush was nearly over. As she made her way to the kitchen, she saw a few tables still occupied by regulars chatting and finishing their meals. Claire gave them all polite smiles before heading behind the counter to help clear the last set of dishes. The kitchen was buzzing with activity as the staff cleaned up, but Claire's mind wasn't on the plates or the counters. She couldn't stop thinking about the letter in the folder. Who was behind this? And why hadn't anyone mentioned it to her? Claire had worked here for years. She was friendly with the owner, Mr. Weston, and the staff, but she had never heard a word about ownership or business deals. In fact, the thought of running a diner seemed like a dream far out of reach for someone like her. As she wiped down the counter, Claire's thoughts kept returning to the strange man who had delivered the folder. His serious tone and quick exit made her feel like she was missing something important. She needed answers, but what could she do? It wasn't like she had ever expected to become involved in something like this. "Hey, Claire," Tom called from the kitchen. He was wiping his hands on his apron and looked up at her. "You all right? You look a bit distracted." Claire turned, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired. It's been a long shift." "I hear that," Tom said with a chuckle. He leaned against the counter and looked at her with a knowing expression. "You sure everything's okay? You've been acting a little off." "It's nothing," Claire replied quickly, wanting to avoid any further questions. "Just one of those days, you know." Tom nodded, not pushing her any further. He was the type to give people space, and Claire was grateful for that. She didn't want to explain everything to him right now. It felt too big to talk about. After a few more minutes of cleaning, Claire grabbed her jacket from the back and decided to take a walk outside. The air felt cool against her skin, and the soft sound of the rain tapping against the pavement made the world seem a little quieter. She walked down Elm Street, her footsteps echoing softly. The diner was only a block away from her small apartment, so it wasn't a long walk. But tonight, she needed to think. As she walked, Claire replayed the letter over and over in her head. It seemed so unbelievable. How could she, of all people, suddenly own a part of the diner? When Claire finally reached her apartment, she felt both exhausted and confused. She sat down at the small table in her kitchen and looked at the folder once more. Maybe she wasn't meant to figure it all out tonight, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, something that would change everything she knew about her life. The next morning, Claire woke up early, her mind still spinning from everything that had happened the night before. The letter in the folder sat on the small kitchen table, staring at her. She hadn't been able to get a good night's sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she thought about the words she had read. Majority shareholder and ownership of the diner. She didn't understand how any of it could be true. Claire had always thought of herself as just a simple waitress. She worked hard, kept to herself, and never expected anything more. Owning part of the diner? It felt like something out of a movie, not her life. As she made her coffee, Claire tried to think logically. Who would want to make her a shareholder? And why? The thought was so strange. She almost convinced herself that it had been some kind of mistake. But the letter seemed real, and the man in the suit hadn't acted like someone who was making the mistake. She took a deep breath and decided that today she would go to the diner early. Maybe Mr. Weston would be there, and she could ask him about it. He was the owner, after all. If anyone knew what was going on, it would be him. Claire finished her coffee and got dressed in her uniform. The cool air outside matched her unease, and she walked to the diner with quick steps, trying to shake the feeling of uncertainty that had settled in her chest. When she arrived, the diner was still closed, and the lights were off inside. Claire stood for a moment outside, staring at the sign. It had always been a cozy, familiar place, but today it felt different. She hesitated for a second before pushing the door open. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the air. It was still quiet, the calm before the morning rush. Claire walked to the back, where the kitchen staff was starting to get ready. She noticed a few of the regulars sitting at the counter, already sipping their coffee. Everything seemed normal, but Claire's mind was elsewhere. As she entered the small office behind the kitchen, she found Mr. Weston, the owner, sitting at his desk, looking over some paperwork. He looked up when Claire entered and smiled. "Good morning, Claire," he said warmly. "What brings you in so early?" "Morning, Mr. Weston," Claire replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to ask you something. It's about the letter I received yesterday." Mr. Weston raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "What letter?" "The one that said I'm a majority shareholder," Claire said, sitting down across from him. "I don't understand. Is this some kind of mistake?" There was a long pause as Mr. Weston set his papers down and stared at her. Claire couldn't read his expression. For a moment, it seemed like he was thinking carefully about what to say. Finally, he spoke. Claire, he said slowly, I was hoping you'd ask about that. It's not a mistake. I've been meaning to tell you for a while now, but, well, I guess now is as good a time as any. Claire felt a mix of confusion and curiosity building inside her. This wasn't a mistake, but what did it all mean? Claire sat silently, her heart racing. She had hoped for some kind of explanation, but now that it was coming, it only raised more questions. Mr. Weston's calm demeanor didn't help ease the confusion swirling in her mind. What do you mean? Claire finally managed to ask. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt like a storm was brewing. Why would I be a majority shareholder? I've worked here for years, but I never expected anything like this. Mr. Weston took a deep breath, leaning back in his chair. He looked at her with a seriousness that made Claire's stomach tighten. There's something you don't know, Claire, he began. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Claire listened closely, her eyes never leaving him. She felt like she was on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. The diner, Mr. Weston continued, isn't just a small business. It's part of a larger company, and when I opened it, I didn't just want to own it. I wanted to share it. You've been here since the beginning, Claire. You've always worked hard, shown loyalty, and treated everyone with kindness. You've made this place feel like home to people. That's why I wanted you to be a part of it. Claire blinked in surprise. She had always thought of the diner as just a job, a place where she worked day in and day out to make ends meet. But now, hearing this, it felt like she was learning about a completely different side of things. I don't understand, Claire said, shaking her head. You've owned the diner all this time. Why would I be given shares now? And why didn't you tell me sooner? Mr. Weston looked down for a moment, clearly weighing his words. It's complicated. I've been planning this for years. When the diner became successful, I wanted to make sure it was in good hands for the future. You've always been here, Claire, even when things were tough. I trusted you. I still do. That's why you're now a part owner. Claire sat back in her chair, processing the information. Part owner? It sounded unbelievable. How could she have been so involved without even knowing it? She was just a waitress after all. There were so many things she didn't understand about business, about ownership, about what this meant for her life moving forward. But I didn't ask for this, Claire said quietly, more to herself than to Mr. Weston. I never thought about owning anything. I know, Mr. Weston replied. But sometimes opportunities come in unexpected ways. I believe this is a chance for you to have more control over your future, Claire. You've earned it. There was a pause as Claire tried to take it all in. She looked down at the folder still in her hands. Everything was changing, and she had no idea what to do next. So, what now? Claire asked finally, her voice soft but determined. What am I supposed to do with all of this? Mr. Weston smiled, his expression warm. You'll figure it out. Just take it one step at a time. You have everything you need to succeed. Claire wasn't sure if she was ready for this new responsibility, but something in her stirred. Maybe this was the chance she needed to prove herself, not just as a waitress, but as someone who could help shape the future of the diner she had grown to love. Claire sat quietly, staring at the folder in her hands. Her mind was racing, but the words Mr. Weston had said earlier still echoed in her ears. You've earned it. You'll figure it out. Part owner of the diner? She could hardly wrap her head around it. She had always been the one behind the counter, serving customers, cleaning tables, and doing everything she could to make the place feel like home for others. But now she was part of the heart of it all. I'm not sure I'm ready for this, Claire muttered to herself. She glanced around the small office. Everything seemed the same. The dusty old posters on the walls, the worn-out chair behind Mr. Weston's desk, and the coffee cup sitting on the counter. It all felt so familiar. Yet today, it felt different. Mr. Weston stood up, walking over to her. His calm, steady presence made Claire feel a little more grounded. Claire, I know this is a lot to take in, but it's the truth. You're part of this now. And I believe you have the skills to make it work. Claire shook her head, feeling overwhelmed. She had never been in charge of anything like this before. Owning part of the diner meant making decisions, handling responsibilities, and dealing with things she had never even thought about. What about the others? Claire asked. The staff? Will they know? How will they react? Mr. Weston sat back down behind his desk and sighed. I'm planning to tell them soon. You've earned their respect, Claire. They'll understand. You've worked side by side with them for years. They know what kind of person you are. Claire nodded, but doubt still lingered in her mind. It was one thing to be respected as a coworker, but it was another thing entirely to be seen as someone with authority. The thought made her nervous. She didn't want things to change in a way that would make her uncomfortable or cause tension with her friends at work. Just then, the door to the office opened. Tom, her longtime coworker, walked in with a tray of freshly brewed coffee. "Morning, Claire," he said, smiling. He placed the tray on the desk. "How's everything going? You look like you've got a lot on your mind." Claire took a deep breath. "It's been a strange morning, Tom. Something happened. I know," Tom interrupted, sitting down across from her. "Mr. Weston told me. He said you're part of the diner now." Claire froze. "He told you?" "Yep," Tom said, his tone light. "And honestly, I think it's great. You deserve it, Claire. You've always been the one who keeps things together here." Claire blinked, a little surprised by his response. She had expected him to be more confused or maybe even unsure, but instead he seemed supportive. That made her feel a little better. "Thanks, Tom," Claire said, a smile forming on her face. "I'm just not sure what comes next." Tom grinned. "You'll figure it out. Just remember, we're all here to help. We're a team. Always have been." Claire felt a small weight lift off her shoulders. Maybe she didn't have to have all the answers right now. Maybe, just maybe, she could take it one step at a time, with the people who knew her best by her side. The next few days were a blur for Claire. As the news spread among the staff, there were a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity, and a little confusion. At first, Claire wasn't sure how to act. She had been one of the team, always behind the scenes, making things run smoothly. But now, with her new role, things felt different. Mr. Weston had arranged a meeting with the staff, and Claire was there, sitting quietly, listening as he spoke about the changes ahead. He explained the ownership shift, and that Claire was now a part owner of the diner. It wasn't a huge change, he assured them, but Claire would now have more say in decisions about the diner's future. To her surprise, the staff seemed mostly supportive. They'd worked with Claire for years, and they all knew how much she cared about the diner. People like Sarah, who ran the cash register, and Dave, who managed the kitchen, gave her encouraging smiles. Even Tom, who had been her closest coworker, looked proud. After the meeting, Claire stayed behind to help Mr. Weston sort through some paperwork. "I know this is a lot," he said, handing her a few files. "But you're doing great, Claire. The team respects you. And now they'll look to you for leadership, too." Claire took the papers, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. It wasn't that she didn't want to help. She just never expected it to happen this way. She had always been the one behind the scenes, quietly doing her part. But now, things were different. Now people would be looking to her for decisions. That evening, Claire sat at the counter after closing, sipping a cup of tea. The diner was quiet now, the last of the customers had left, and the staff was finishing up their tasks. Claire's thoughts kept drifting back to the role she now found herself in. What did it mean for her? What kind of leader would she be? "Hey, Claire," Tom said, walking over. He had finished cleaning up the kitchen and was grabbing his jacket. "You hanging in there?" "I think so," Claire replied with a small smile. "It's just a lot to take in. I never expected any of this." Tom nodded. "Yeah, it's a lot, but I know you, Claire. You're a natural at this. You've always known how to bring the team together." Claire looked at him, grateful for his support. "Thanks, Tom. I just hope I don't mess it up." "You won't," he said confidently. "We're all here to help, don't forget that." As Claire left the diner that night, she felt a little lighter. The road ahead wasn't clear, and there were still a lot of things she didn't know. But she had the support of her team, and she had the chance to make a real difference. Maybe she wasn't as prepared as she'd like to be, but she knew one thing for sure: she was ready to try. As she walked home, the soft evening breeze on her face, Claire realized that this new chapter in her life wasn't as scary as it had seemed. She didn't need to have all the answers right now. All she needed to do was take it one step at a time, with the team by her side, and keep doing what she had always done, making the diner feel like home.